Okay. So, please be welcome to the 6th Journeys of Mixed Music of UFRJ. This time we're going to have a concert. We're going to have a concert, now an opening concert and a closing concert. And tonight we have here LUMÍNICO. We have Rodrigo Sigal, Alejandro Escuer, members of LUMÍNICO. We're going to watch their concert called Luz Negra. And then we're going to have a round table. We're going to have a round table with Thiago Cury from Música Estranha Festival. So please be welcome, Alejandro, Rodrigo, and Thiago to the 6th Journeys of Mixed Music of UFRJ. Hi. Thiago, are you with us? Yes.
Hello.
So please let me say I'm very grateful. Thank you very much for your presence on taking part of this edition. This time we're going to study and talk about relation between video, music, art, crossover art between music and images, also virtual reality and all this. And I want to thank LUMÍNICO for taking part of the 6th Journey of UFRJ, which is an extension project of UFRJ, the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. And this project is attached to the Performance Hoje Research Group and the PPGM, which is the Programa de Pós-Graduação em Música da UFRJ, which is the first master and PhD program in Brazil. So I want to thank you for your presence. I won't talk too long. We're going to watch the concert, and then we're going to have the round table. So, Rodrigo Sigal, thank you very much for your presence here.
Thanks,
member of LUMÍNICO.
Thank you, Pedro. It's been great. We've been friends for a very long time, so I'm really grateful, and of course, great to be here with Thiago. And as you know, Alejandro and I have been part of LUMÍNICO for many years. We'll talk about it later, but we're very happy to be here with you today, and it's great to be part of the festival. Thank you very much.
Okay. And Alejandro Escuer, flutist, member of LUMÍNICO and Onyx Ensemble also. Be welcome, Alejandro.
Thank you, Pedro, for the invitation. It's great meeting you all, and I am just thrilled to share with you and your platforms and your audience what LUMÍNICO is about. The show, as you said, is called Luz Negra because it will explore the contradictions of human life today, and it starts with the dark sound and very softly. So if the concert starts in the dark, don't think your computer is not working. It is working fine. So you just have to keep it tuned to discover what the concert is all about.
Okay, and to have the immersive experience that you are proposing. Yes, and Luz Negra was made during the pandemics. You said it was made and thought in the context of a world pandemic.
Well, we started the project before the pandemics, but it really has flourished during the pandemics. So it is some of the pieces are recorded from my studio, my home studio, and some of them are, performed or composed in others' composers' studio. But yes, it's mainly been broadcasted during these very strange times of COVID.
Yes, strange times in COVID in Brazil. I have my friend Thiago Cury from Música Estranha Festival in Brazil. We are approaching, unfortunately, 400,000 dead people because of COVID. It's a very difficult moment, but we have to go through. We have to continue, and making art, making music, making projects is very important. Thiago Cury from Festival Música Estranha. Be welcome. Many thanks to be here.
Thank you, Pedro. It's such a pleasure to be here with you and with Rodrigo and Alejandro. I appreciate very much all your efforts and everything you do, and I'm following always. And I'm very honored to this challenge to moderate such a great talk with these restless minds that are trying to find new ways around music and art.
Okay, so let's see Luz Negra, Black Light with Lumínico. Okay, we are back after watching Luz Negra with Lumínico by Rodrigo Sigal, Electroacoustics, Alejandro Escuer, Flute, and now giving a sequence to the sixth Journeys of Mixed Music of UFRJ. When I asked to Thiago Cury to start our round table, we have Rodrigo Sigal in Morelia, Alejandro Escuer in Acapulco, Thiago Cury in São Paulo, and me, Pedro Bittencourt, in Rio de Janeiro. Thiago.
Hello, hello, Pedro. Hello, Alejandro, Rodrigo. I would like to thank you for this opportunity and to thank all the audience that are following us now and this wonderful 6 Jornadas de Músicas Mistas from UFRJ. It's been a real pleasure to talk about an interesting new format project from Lumínico. Lumínico is a kind of a series. Rodrigo will explain later, but it's a multimedia piece that is a collaborative work, and I think it has a lot for us to discuss around new art and new music. So I will skip the traditional protocol of presenting like all the curriculum vitae from these astonishing artists, composers, and multifaceted artists. Rodrigo Sigal is a composer, art manager, has a strong career, academic career, vigorous, and he's director of CMMAS, the Center for Music and Sonic Arts in Mexico. And Alejandro Escuer, it's a Mexican flutist, composer, sound and visual artist with many creative original projects, and also he's a scholar also. He has a multidisciplinary approach, and I think this has a lot to do with the piece. So I will follow with the first question to Rodrigo Sigal around authorship, right? And I would like to him to speak about a little bit of the Onyx ensemble that all the piece would work towards this community, and also regarding this authorship and collaborative approach. How can we approach new ways of conceptualizing and thinking about authorship in a work such as like this one, right?
Well, thanks very much. Thanks, Thiago, and thanks, Pedro, for all the putting together this festival and these activities. We are very happy to be here, and of course, with my very good friend and collaborator Alejandro, we've been performing together for more than 15 years now. And Lumínico, it's a project that it's part of the Onyx ensemble. Maybe Alejandro will explain a little bit there in a few moments. But Onyx is a well-known chamber ensemble in Mexico that has been developing new ways of exploring contemporary music, the music that it's done in our days by composers working today. And as part of that, for many years, Lumínico has been it's a kind of a spin-off that came out of this idea of exploring also new technology and exploring ways of understanding how the works of composers dealing with digital equipment and digital ideas can also be part of this chamber music ensemble. Therefore, this idea of authorships that you were saying, the idea of creating the music and owning the music, it's a completely different thing, because Lumínico, as everyone saw in Luz Negra, which is our recent project, it's an ongoing concert that never stops, lasts for a little bit under an hour, of pieces by many composers, improvisations, technology, of course, visual and video, and the performers live. But it actually generates like an arc or a structure or a dramatic structure from the pieces that many composers share with us, and we sometimes perform them completely. Sometimes it's an improvisation together with the technology. So there's these two sides: the idea of fixed music by contemporary composers, written music, defined music that it's performed by Alejandro or any of the other guests like Iván Manzanilla in the video you just saw, or with technology, which is what I do, running the video or doing the live electronics or the real time or the fixed media. But there's also space for connecting and generating this full performance where there's improvisation, where Alejandro and I work as a duo in academic music. So this idea of authorship is somehow erased, not because the composers didn't do the music, but the whole project belongs to everyone that participates. That's how I see it, at least.
Very nice. Alejandro would like to talk a little bit about that and talk a little bit more about the Onyx Ensemble community and interaction.
Of course, yes. Onyx Ensemble started 25 years ago, and it started with a classical contemporary chamber ensemble of a mixed instrumentation, winds, piano, strings, and electronics from the beginning. And LUMÍNICO started about almost 20 years ago, and the idea was to incorporate in Onyx a dimension that was completely different from, looking at the scores and doing chamber music, which is great. I love that kind of a ritual. But LUMÍNICO is more, I think it's more about the expansion. It's about creating a new ritual to listening to music differently. It's a new experience. So in order for the audience to fall into this kind of a spell or this kind of like a new experience, it's very important for us as creators to, as Rodrigo was saying, make up for like an arc of dramatic experience with no interruptions. It's not like a one piece, the credit, and blah blah blah. And one piece, the credit, and then when the clapping starts, it's like the magic is lost somehow. It is like this is like a soundtrack of a movie. So you don't watch a movie and then the movie stops. And then it says the credit of that particular composer, on the credit of that particular director, or the stunt that did this and that, etc. So it's basically all at the end. And the idea for us not to have interruptions is to submerge and the audience into this deeper experience without interruptions, so that they can experience music more deeply and in a different way. So we combined these things. And also, as Rodrigo was saying, it is a laboratory where we can improvise. And since we are not seeing each other because of the pandemic, what you normally see in LUMÍNICO's concerts is many rehearsals about transitions between this piece and that piece. We improvise and create this kind of bridge between pieces, so it all becomes coherent. So we tried to do that here, but it was quite a challenge because of the pieces were already done in separate settings. So yes, and about authorship, it will be, as Rodrigo also said, very important to give the credit of the composer at the end, but to try to honor the experience of the listener first. If you already like something very much, you will look for it eventually. Mm-hmm. You can approach LUMÍNICO. You can see our webpage. You can write to us. But it's not the time in the middle of a piece to see, this piece is by this composer. Oh, I looked it up. No, you are not, because you are looking at the concert. You are watching this And it's also because it has a visual dimension. Because as a visual concert, you have to have concentration in between and a dialogue between the images and the sound in a very different way. Sometimes the pieces are concrete, sometimes are referential, sometimes they are metaphors, sometimes it's just a person performing. It's just a combination of all those things that create this kind of journey, visual journey, that has to be coherent, and you don't want the credits to be in between those kind of discourses.
Right,
Yeah.
nice. So I would like for you to talk a little bit about the relation and the hierarchy on the visual and sound slash music. We see that there are little pieces or some pieces with some composers, and this hierarchy and how it was built, right? It started with some idea, or each one has one process. Could you talk a little bit about that? And also thinking about, we have learned how that the opera would be like the full art format, right? And it was said to us, right? And now these multimedia formats sometimes are called by opera or not, or new opera or rock opera or new or art music. I think this is a label, very nice label that we don't have in Portuguese, by the way, right? So through this view, how do you could you explain or approach this hierarchy, and also about the exchange between language structures, right? Visual language structures and musical language structures, traditional ones, new ones, how they cross.
This is a
Well, it's
very yeah. Go ahead.
it's a very interesting question that has been like up there with us for many years. That's part of the core idea that we both are attracted to, and how we started working together. It's finding ways of connecting these levels of language and musical structure, as you were saying. And I think that it's been developing for a very long time. So we have different approaches, but something that I think it's important to share, and I would like to share about this question, is that we always try to find ways of moving information that comes from the visual into the musical domain, or from the musical domain into the visuals. And that happens in different ways. For example, when there are pieces composed by any of the composers we've been working with for years, if they have visuals and they have electronics, we always approach them through an improvisational process, where Alejandro and I work with the piece and develop the piece and find ways to interact with that music. It's already there. And sometimes it's the other way around. We start from fixed music, performing the piece as it's written. And what I was, just to be a little bit shorter in this idea, is that what we explore is how can you understand, for example, the timbre, the color of the sound, as an analogy to what you see in the video, and how can you really explore working in intermedia or transmedia approach, and not only putting together two things at the same time. And that always, I mean, it's challenging, of course, but it also brings back many very interesting results.
Yeah, and also I can add, we like contrasts. So if you have one piece, I mean, let me just rephrase this. The first show in Lumínico, I remember one of the first ones that was all produced in a festival. It had like 22 episodes, 22 pieces. You know, some of them,
like segments.
Yeah, some are segments of pieces. So some of them are 2-minute segment of a 10-minute piece, and a 3-minute segment of a 5-minute piece, etc. Because we found, like, if it is a soundtrack, You know, we recompose the whole thing in order for the audience to have a different experience than listening to every piece even in that particular order. Because, you know, normally the composer thinks about an introduction and then a development and then a climax and at the end, right? So it's like a unity. But what about if I take 3 or 4 pieces and I use this introduction of this piece and I don't use the other introductions because they don't work fine with me, because we want the audience to feel like they are we are taking them into different directions through the pieces. And when we suspend, let's say this piece is not finished and we cut, sometimes this cut is, I mean, it's very coherent the way it cuts, otherwise we won't do it. And we normally take this same note and that same note connects to the very same note of another piece, or we can, Rodrigo and I improvise in between these 2 pieces so that we play a little bit of what you already heard, and we also play a little bit of what you are going to hear in the future. So it's like a bridge between the 2 pieces. So a normal, typical rehearsal of Lumínico is to rehearse basically transitions, because transitions are hard and are difficult, and you have to make the whole thing very coherent. And another thing about hierarchy is that it's basically a concert. So music is always the center of it. Of course, sometimes music works best with visuals because it's conceived to be a unity between visuals and music. Sometimes it's an electroacoustic or mixed piece without a video, and we work on a video. And sometimes it is conceived as a unity. But in general, I would say we always favor music over the visuals as a tendency, but try to find a balance in between the visual and the sound of that dimension.
And by the way,
Pedro?
Alejandro, yeah, by the way, when you make live concerts, you are on the scene and you have also the lights, you have the position, you are on the scene, and you are part of the visual
Yes,
stuff
Rodrigo
and the
too.
spectacle.
Rodrigo and I
Yeah.
are on stage. Rodrigo is also on stage. Yes, yes,
Yeah, I said you too, sorry.
yes.
Yeah, because that allows. Well, that's interesting, because even though if I do the technology, there's nothing. It's always more interesting to follow Alejandro, of course, or any of the performers. But that allows us to behave more in a chamber music relationship, instead of me being down, or we can have cues, we can change things, we can decide things on the spot. He can actually listen to me better. So it's more like trying to have that a more like a chamber music relationship.
Yeah, and
Direct
also,
interaction, directly
yes,
interaction.
yes.
Yeah.
There are several reasons for that. One is that, and the other is because I want this guy to listen to what I'm listening. If you put it up there, I don't know, in a cabin, you know, he's not listening the way I'm listening. So I
It's not
want
the
him,
same thing.
you know, so I want him to listen to when he's listening. That's one thing. And the other thing is that sometimes we do things in transition between electronics and new technology and flutes and sometimes guest performers. But sometimes we take actual things like with us. For instance, in Montreal once we did a piece with triangles. So suddenly the piece ended, and then we started playing the triangles, Rodrigo and I, right? Was it in Montreal? I don't remember. Sometimes we take crotals with a bow, right? And then we have these dissonances up in the air in between an electroacoustic piece and a solo piece. So it's like creating something right there. Sometimes we use cuencos, Tibetan cuencos, or things like that that we take with us. At some point, for instance, we also used a closed circuit video of a little playground where Rodrigo was putting these little toy robots, and then he filmed that, and the video of the little toys moving around was projected behind us. So we've done lots of experimentation and improvisation, and that's what it is Lumínico so exciting, because it's really a laboratory where you can play, really. You can improvise and you can experiment with as many resources as you can.
And with many possibilities, Alejandro. Thiago, may I ask one question that is done in YouTube, in the YouTube chat?
Please, go ahead.
Andrea Ernest Dias, she's a flutist also. She's the flutist of Estranha Ensemble.
And the old
Andrea Ernest Dias, she's asking, was Luz Negra made in the context of the pandemics?
Yes, well, it is an interesting question. It started with a project that conceptually it started before the pandemics, and the idea was to contrast the two dimensions of human nature. We see, which is, one is more constructive and attached to life and attached to things that are positive, and another dimension that is darker, that is destructive, that has to do with the origin of wars, origin of disasters that humans create. It is like the life and death dichotomy in the way we live in today's world. So it is like two sides of the same coin. It's the two dimensions of human life, contemporary life in general. And the thing is that this hasn't changed during the pandemic. It actually has deepened more in the pandemic. So we just go on with the concept. But that's the thing. And it's a contradiction. It's a light within the dark, and the light is not as bright without the dark. So you need the dark to have the light. So you need both things in order to have some sort of like dialogue. That's the way the show reflects. It's just a reflection on who we are in general. And yes, it has flourished during the pandemic, but we started thinking about it before.
Okay, thank you.
So taking the lead from that nice question from Andrea, I would like to make a provocation around this thing that we've been talking about, the acoustic feel and the presential interaction that we have been cut with the pandemic, right? And in the beginning, we thought that, okay, 3 months, 5 months, half a year, and then we have to learn how to deal with that. And I feel that this situation has catalyzed some issues, and there are some issues around the format. And taking a lead also from the Rodrigo that talk about the transmedia format, right? And I think this has to do with the new ways of thinking an art form, right? It has not one form that is. It has to be presential, offline, with acoustic relation and acoustic connection, direct connection. Now we have to find ways, and I feel sometimes I have been following CNN, EAS, and Rodrigo's work that he has been doing such great and diverse experimentation through new formats around electroacoustic and visuals, and building a community around that. And sometimes we see one piece having one format and then another one. And what could you think could you say to us about this issue about transmedia format and the relations, the telematic relations, and how we are trying to find ways to emulate kind of an idea and a more sensorial, immersive relation, not only the final result, but also the process and the exchange with inputs and concepts?
Well, I would say it's a very broad and complex topic. It's much more than a question, but I would say something that it's attractive, especially for me, and that we explore quite a lot in Lumínico, which is finding in each piece like this bridge that allows us to connect it through our own little pieces of music into something else, because the whole process of creating the show can be moved around. So we have a lot of pieces in our repertoire, but we organize them differently for different shows. For example, it's pretty mobile, and for that, or pretty flexible in that sense. And for that, we need usually to think not only about the technology, the technical requirements to do that, but also how artistically they can connect, and that makes us having to create that. It requires from us the creation of these little connections and junctures, I will say, where we can go to different places. And that's at the end of the day something that of course comes from the technology, but also comes from exploring ways of understanding how the music is made, and proposing or generating something for the music that allows us to connect. And in this distant way of collaborating has been, at the end of the day, like for most of us, has put a lot of pressure in not only relying on the old technology, not just creating the normal videos we used to create, which were recordings of our performances, or Alejandro performing, or with me on stage, and then the video on the back. So there's a lot of creativity that can be included with the new technology to present these things. We are in a two-dimensional, it's a two-dimensional surface trying to transmit many multidimensional discourses, not only spatial information with the sound, spatial information for what you see, but there's a lot of space that it's somehow lost and has to be shared with the audience in an abstract way. I think that's the biggest challenge we all face nowadays with these explorations of intermedia things with music and visual.
Alejandro, would like to say something around that?
Yeah, well, I've always wanted to break the typical relationship between the audience and the on stage, the musicians on stage. What I mean is to change that in a way. So, for instance, we performed in planetaries, for instance. That idea worked very well for some time. It is very difficult because the planetariums are normally very low budgeted. Nobody cares about them. They were very famous in the 60s, 70s, and now they are like, very abandoned. And
all buildings where they just show a couple of rock shows every weekend.
Yeah, basically.
Out of fashion, a little bit.
Out of fashion, and it's incredible because they are really places where kids can learn how to fall in love with science and with the sense of experimentation.
At least in Mexico, it doesn't happen all over the world. In Mexico.
Yeah. See, in many other places too. And the thing is that it was such a challenge to make our technology work in a spherical kind of a setting. Oops, sorry about it. Basically.
Yes, in Brazil, it's just like that with the planetariums. Now we have a new one that was renewed with old technology.
Yeah, the problem is the investment that you need to keep updated with what other countries produce in terms of the quality of the images and all that. It's very difficult, even if you do it, to have access to these projectors and these, of course, 4K or 8K video projectors.
Exactly. Yeah. Alejandro.
Yes. Sorry, someone tries to. Okay. Yes. The thing is about a project like Lumínico it's that it takes a lot of trials, a lot of you have to really experiment with some ideas, and then if you don't like something, you have to try it again in another show or in another opportunity, and change the factors that according to your thinking, they didn't work really well. So it's really a non-stop experimenting experience. We normally take a lot of time also in the setup, because we want to make sure everything works fine. It's not just a video that is there by its own. No, we have to control every part, every bit. It has to have some resolution. It has to have some brilliance. There has to be a relationship between the image and the musicians on stage. And the illumination of the theater has to not to overwhelm the video. So it's not easy. You have to illuminate the musicians, but make sure that doesn't disturb the video. And the video has to be not too small or not extremely overwhelming. So it's all about balance and about finding and refining the process every time.
Yeah, indeed, you have to adapt, right, for each situation.
Yes.
But I feel this would lead us to another relation towards also authorship that has to do with this idea, right? And also, I feel, and this is a question, right, that we could through that path reach new audiences, right? That we won't be able to reach, right, other way, or the traditional spaces. And then that also related with this pandemic situation, that there was like a special meme that was in the internet. I don't know if you have seen. It was like an empty theater, like traditional municipal theater, like empty, and saying, this is a contemporary concert audience in the pandemic, nobody in the audience. And then another picture with the same, no audience. This is a contemporary concert before the pandemic, right?
Bad joke. Bad joke.
In Brazil, we have this difficulty. I think it's not here, only here, but we have difficult to find our audience, right? And I run a festival called Strange Music Festival, that we have this path. And I think through the pandemic and through the internet, we are able to reach new audience all over the world, and also to target them and to match them, right? So I feel this is something new for us. How do we communicate? And
how to get to them, Thiago? How to get there?
How not to get to them? So how to put your music near someone that are willing to, right? And that are not used to the traditional places that the traditional music, classical music, not only classical, but all the niches also. The free improvisation has the same issues. And
yes.
But I believe working with video and music, and I must say Lumínico has a very interesting approach on concrete abstract elements, the equilibrium. And Andrea Neshidia, she said here on the chat, on YouTube chat, that she enjoyed very much the connections between the pieces, that she thought it was only one flow. And that's the idea, as you expose it, as you explain it to us.
I always think that the pieces that we select and the connections are more decided upon the function, or how they belong to this whole concert, not independent pieces. So we sometimes change the durations, and we keep polishing that to explore different ways of doing it. But at the end, it's selecting pieces of music as if they were functions of the music, the complete music, like parts of one idea that can be interchangeable.
Yeah.
And also you were saying about this idea of or like the big opera, right? The opera as an ideal refined form of interdisciplinary, components. You have the visual, you have the text, you have the sometimes dancers, you have the singers, and you have so many levels. In this case, I would say you even have more layers, because the video can have many other things. Like, for instance, the last video that João Pedro did for his piece is a digital world that never existed before. It's like a new world where you can really explore or see or appreciate in a different way. Especially if you have imagine this projected in a very big screen with high resolution and incredible sound. And what Rodrigo does too is to put at least 6 or perhaps 8 speakers around the audience, so there is spatialization of music, so it moves around you. So the volumes of those things moving make you feel like everything is moving around you.
Like in the cinema.
Like in this cinema, but thinking about concert music, thinking of musically about it, not only about the plot of the movie
And the position of stuff. Yeah.
Yes,
exactly. But that's also part of the immersive process. I forgot to mention that if you listen to these concerts, at least now, it's very important to have headphones, because you have to really listen to this in a high resolution way. Because if you do it in the cell phone or even in the computer with these little speakers, of course you have an idea, but it is not. It doesn't have anything to do with what the real sound can really affect you as a listener. So it's all these things that the technology allows us to do and to work with. The transitions, the possibility of moving the pieces in different order, different durations. For instance, once in Japan, we worked with a great Japanese percussionist, and she and I had a blast improvising, and sometimes there was a part when she did a solo with percussion and electronics and video, and then I did a solo with her, and then a duo with Rodrigo, and then the trio, and the possibility of being so flexible and creating a show especially for that tour was really something memorable, and that's why we like the projects too much. It's just it's really something that we enjoy.
Right. Taking the lead about this, how do you build the final big, and how do you juxtapose all the segments, like Rodrigo said? This should be an interesting process, right? And also, it was very interesting to see there are pieces that are more like abstract, with abstract visuals, like computer art or graphic design, like this kind of virtual alien-like new space. And there were others who has a direct functional from the visuals, like the atomic bomb and all the things that are related directly with one idea, right? And the computer and the space race, and now that moment, right? And there are in between them some pieces that you are just playing, right? Or at the first sight, it looks like just playing, and then you see little things like the fragments and the reflection with the mirror, and also the iPad that we could see you through the mirror fragment, right? So it was very interesting of this. How do you build the narrative of the pieces all together, and dealing also with the images and how the images are related with the narratives. So I also was thinking about you said about improvisation, right? That it has a lot to do with the improvisation and process. And if you perhaps had some kind of experience with improvising visuals also, or some visuals improvising through the process.
Yes, we've done that. It's very interesting for us exploring new technologies and new approaches for every time. So for a very long time, we've worked with many people doing the video, but for a long time with Jose Luis Garcia, who for a few years developed for Lumínico a tool that allowed us to generate closed circuit information to be able to work with that in real time. And we've done that many times, and we sometimes explore that a little bit further. It has its technical difficulties, and it needs more than one computer to be safe enough to do it. But what I was going to say is that this idea of always changing the technology goes hand in hand with this idea of changing the pieces, because at the end of the day, it's a challenge of generating a coherent project, a coherent language that comes from many different technologies and musical ideas, like you were saying, Thiago, abstract or computer art, or more like programmatic stuff or improvisatory stuff. So that's what we enjoy, and that at the end of all these years, 15 years performing together with many different instrumentalists and Jose Luis and other people, we enjoy a lot being able to create the show every time. And in this case in particular, Luz Negra, because of the pandemics, at the end of the day, because of this idea of recording and then processing, so there's no real-time video processing, of course, because everything is fixed. But it's interesting because we've done the fixed things on concerts, then the real-time things on concerts, and now it's like time, it's deferred, and we do real-time processing, but at home, and we have to fix it like real-time processing with the music, but we have to choose things from recordings and improvise with them and then fix them. It's a completely different approach that we never had before, and that we're just learning like everyone else, and finding how to appropriate that into our way of working, which is something that I believe is the next step for all of us, not only in Lumínico, but artists in general. Now that we use the tools, and we have all these tools appearing all the time, and all the applications and ways of using mobile phones, closed circuit things on the internet, how you can actually grasp a way of doing things individually that actually has a little bit of your own language, but explores technology, but works online, but you can also bring to the stage. So that's the new border that we have to explore how to cross, in my perspective.
It's real challenge.
It is a very, very big challenge, because we all want to go back to concerts in person, but we don't want to go back and do exactly the same thing. We want to bring into the stage what we learned through the pandemic. So it's going to be a next step, a very complicated next step.
Yes, a transitional one, definitely, right?
Absolutely.
And Thiago,
Yes.
you were saying about reaching new audiences. What we've been trying to do in Lumínico regarding that aspect, we've are as open as possible aesthetically. So some you don't see very much in this show, but some shows have certain quotes from the world of pop music or jazz, or of course it is refined through classical contemporary music, but you can identify different other influences. For instance, also world music from Japan or from India, and from India
or from Iran.
or from Iran, So from other countries that have their own classical music tradition that's very very solid and very ancient, and incorporate them in a dramatically contemporary way. For instance, when we work with Ganesh Ananda, which is a composer and percussionist from India, he didn't know how to read a score. So
yeah, no score. Yeah.
So I needed to learn these rhythms and
They do by heart everything. Is it true?
And so I had to rehearse with that, with him, and learn his way, and he learned our way, learning it by heart. So it was an interesting process to incorporate this kind of other approaches to making music. Not just improvisation, but improvisation according to certain traditions, which could be jazzy or could be more like Indian or more like from other parts of the world. That openness in terms of aesthetics, it's been very successful. For instance, we play sometimes a piece by the controversial composer from Holland, Jacob TV. Jacob TV does these crazy things, and many composers from the academia say you are very pop. You know, you are very pop.
He works with video also.
He works with video,
yes.
And
we done videos.
And he does crazy stuff with the loops and you know. So we've done that piece from him and other composers that are more open to very different influences. So when we play, for instance, in Bilbao, I remember there were, I don't know why, but most of the audience was from 14 to 18 years old. They were like teenagers, and they really loved the concert. Really were blown away by it, and they were really crazy about it. And so they made us think, you know, we are on a right direction, just being open to just music without trying to say, this is classical contemporary, this is, you know, this and that. And for instance, one of the concerts in the last concerts before the pandemic was in the Arizona University in the US. And at some point, I started doing some Bach. So I started playing a little bit of Bach solo flute piece, you know, the partita in A minor.
Yes, I remember.
And then I started this movement that's slow and that's very typical of Bach. But then, before I finished, I started improvising about it, you know, then we changed it into something visual. So we had to rehearse that a lot, but it's just a possibility to take from what you think it's more expressive to this and that other level, so that people can have a grasp on something one after the other, either visually or sonically or both.
Interesting. Rodrigo, you would like to, because this thing about the audiences, I think it's very important, and it's very nice to see like such a vigorous and like you are a virtuoso classical flutist, right? Yeah, and such great technique and musicality, etc. But and also Rodrigo with the expansion of how the electroacoustic can fill into a piece. But you are talking the things that everybody, right, would be interesting in talking about, in feeling, in like a fruição. How do you say that, Pedro? In fruir.
Enjoying.
Yeah.
How to enjoy.
How to enjoy the music, like music. Like.
Yes, technology helps a lot in one sense, because through technology we have the possibility of combining things out of context, like what Alejandro was saying, Bach, and we have plenty of drum and bass and pulse-based music that allows people to actually relax a little bit within the contemporary music scene, and people are more prepared. First of all, we are a very visual society, so when you have visuals, you have a lot of help to move things towards the place you want. And then when you have music that you can follow and you can understand, it works quite well to jump between a very abstract and contemporary music and back into a more technology-based thing that people are more used to, like drum and bass or pulse or beats or maybe even words, recorded words or patterns that allows you to bring people back and then go again into a more abstract place where people can just dream and follow whatever they want, and then back into a more specific and easy to follow thing. And that's something that works very well. The technology, it works perfectly for that. It allows us to jump from one place to the other. And I think that's a very powerful tool that we've been exploring, so we can have an audience of young kids or young people like the one Alejandro was saying. And then we've been into many different places where suddenly we have projects with a special audience of one age, kids or younger audiences, not a diverse concept where people just buy their ticket. So we are allowed to change that very quickly and maybe go into a more drum and bass or extend our sections for that. And then Alejandro is very good also at throughout the concert, during the improvisations, to get in touch and get the feeling, to read the room and redirect a little bit of what we do, which is also very nice. Technology allows us to do that.
Yeah, it has to do also you speaking about. I was like seeing in my head what could be like the Baroque area with like people playing on the bar, like, and people listening to the same theme that was played for the king, but now it was on the bar and it was connected. And then feeling like I had a research when I was in university, and I had an answer for a question for the composer. Said, your child listen to your music, go to your concerts? Does your mother like go to your concerts? Indeed, the Strange Music Festival, this title comes from my mother. So
I didn't know that.
After a concert,
good.
Yeah, and said, it was like there was light, the off, light on, people like shout, etc. And she said, I was really impacted. I was falling, but it's kind of strange music, isn't it, Thiago? So,
Thiago.
Yes.
Yeah. Now we have a question by Guilherme Werneck. He's asking us, do you think the video expands the expression of the music, or it works in the other way, narrowing our perception?
No, I would say I would answer this by saying that none of those. It complements, it generates new information that we try to link with what we hear or what we listen to. So it's actually a way of guiding how we listen, because as I was saying, we are very visual, so it takes front stage. But when it's abstract and it develops slowly, it allows you to concentrate on what you are listening. So the video also has a lot of power on guiding your attention, not only towards the music and back to the video.
And Alejandro, as a visual, you are also a visual artist, right, Alejandro?
Yeah,
I approach that.
Yeah, I started drawing and designing since I was very little, and what I try to do is try to enrich the visual part of Lumínico as much as possible, either directly with what I do or indirectly. For instance, choosing the materials, the visual materials with the composers, because many times the composers don't have any clue on what to do visually, and sometimes we decide just to be performing the piece, and that's it. But sometimes I have to decide or recommend some sort of like visual part of his or her piece. Or sometimes it's my piece and I do something about it. For instance, I remember when we played in Colombia, we used some of my photographs. I really like photographs, and the photography has been part of all my travels and all what I do. And sometimes I take my photos and then I do some designs out of the photos, etc. So this has enriched more indirectly the show, because I want to honor the music, because it's a concert. This is a concert. We don't have to miss that. It's a concert who has branches, and the branches enrich that trunk, that concert. The branches give life to this trunk. So the visual part of it, it's just strengthened the visual concert. Um, and also I like to incorporate other visual worlds and not only mine, by other people. So I guess by choosing the visual elements, I am also very attracted to slow motion videos, because Lumínico is very much about hypnotism or about introspection. It's about consciousness, and it's like an oniric world, not quite defined. No, it's not necessarily something very defined. So it's ambiguous on purpose, and I like the ambiguity of the show, because then every person in the audience gives the meaning of this show, the meaning of this part or that section of the show. So it becomes an open piece or open concert, where the content is given partly or greatly by the audience members. So ambiguity is part of what I like, and not so. That's why not so many videos are concrete. Some of them are, but some of them are just abstract, so that people can imagine anything they want, really.
May I say one thing about this? Sometimes I think there's a process when we repeat, when we see the image many times, and there's a process of abstraction of the concrete. When we see an image in different contexts, or we see it again, we can see it as just an abstraction. For example, the atomic bombs exploding. We know it's a terrible thing, it was tests, but can you try to look at it just as a form developing on the space and in connection to the plants that we were watching? And I remind of Xenakis, Yanis Xenakis, saying that he got inspired with sounds that were horrible for him. The sound of the guns shooting people in Athens, and the explosions, and the everything that he lived in Athens. And then he did abstraction of it. He just got rid of this part, of this bad part, and he was just listening to the sounds themselves. So there's a relation between abstract and concrete that it's not very evident, and it's not fixed. They can move on time.
I think this is a challenge for us that only deal, or are used to deal only with sound that we can shape. And I think even the same music, if you have the different mood, you can feel it differently, right? But when you are talking about images, and images related that are related with history, etc., there's something that it's
harder
imprint there, right? So this is, I think it's a very nice exercise for us as creators to think and to place around what is contemporary creation, hybrid arts creation, right? I think we are starting to reach the end. How do you think, Pedro?
Yeah, we may make the conclusions, and
Yes,
if our guests want to say something else or add something about everything we.
exactly. I would ask.
I in the university, I'm the professor of one seminar that is called Interdisciplinary Music Seminar. It's for composers and performers, and it's so much of a challenge for especially performers who come talk playing the oboe or the guitar, and they have to compose and they have to create a visual world around a piece that they are going to compose for the first time. So the opus one is always very hard for them to tackle because of that complexity, you know. And sometimes looking at these kind of concerts, if we haven't gone to this kind of concerts, it's a little bit how to say, challenging for the viewer. But we invite you to experiment as listeners. We invite you to to go to this strange music festival and to really listening to all this music that you have never heard before. And I think this is a message for all the new audiences, because you know, if you look at a movie and you know already the result, like for instance, you listening to Capriccio Italiano by Tchaikovsky, then you know how it's going to end, right? Or the Swan Lake, you know how you are going to how it's going to end, and you are probably will sing along with the melodies, etc. But what about not watching a movie or watching a movie for the first time? It's exactly that experience that we have to push for the new generations to be aware that you need both things. Love the music you already know and you already can even sing, but also listening a lot of music that you have never heard before and you don't know where it's gonna go. That's gonna enrich your imagination, your capacity for abstraction, even for kids, and that's gonna trigger parts of your brain that are going to make you, I think, in general, a better person. So that's how I think about not only Lumínico, but in general about new music and
No,
contemporary classical music.
I thought you were talking about Thiago's festival because Música Estranha, Strange Music, he says it's sound fuel for unquiet minds.
Yeah,
So it
exactly.
was the same in this very same direction.
Great point.
Okay.
Rodrigo.
Rodrigo.
Fantastic.
Well, no, it's been very nice. It's nice to have a long period of time where we can discuss this. And as I was saying, the good thing about being online is that the web page for Lumínico, it's always there, so people can contact us. We're always open to exchanges, to receive some music, to receive some ideas. And that also it's been very nice to be with you, Pedro and Thiago, here. So thanks very much, and I hope the rest of the festival and the Jornadas goes very well. It's been very nice to be with you guys. And as you know, Pedro, we work from SEMAS together with Onyx and Lumínico here in Mexico. It's a center where many people come. I mean, Pedro has been here, and people come here and explore. So something that I've been noticing for a very long time is how many composers and artists nowadays don't really care about if you are doing contemporary, if you are doing computer music, if you are doing video, if you are doing audio, if you are doing live coding. People just want to create and interact, and those borders are slowly disappearing. So that's something that it's very important also for the festivals and the universities and the institutions and the performers to understand, because we better jump into that wagon, otherwise they are already doing that.
Exactly.
Sure.
Very nice point. So
Yeah,
I
that's,
thank Pedro, Alejandro, Rodrigo for
thank you very
the
much.
nice talk. And Pedro, would you like to finish the?
I just want to thank you all. Thank you very much for taking part of this opening of the 6th Journeys of Mixed Music of UFRJ. And it was a great start. Alejandro, Rodrigo, and Thiago, thank you warmly for being part of this. And I'm sure that all the discussions we had here, they're going to have developments in the future.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Gracias.
Thank you for
Gracias,
the invitation.
Alejandro. Gracias, Rodrigo.
Bye-bye. Thiago,
Bye-bye.
nice meeting you.